Hey guys, how's it going? In today's video, I want to talk about some of the brand new perennials that are coming out this year. We've done a couple other videos prior to this one talking about the new annuals and the new shrubs that are coming out, some things to be watching for. So today's perennials, and I'm excited about it because we are tearing apart large portions of our garden this year just to make way for some fun new stuff like the greenhouse we're putting in, the new lawn we're putting in up front, and it's just going to create a lot of opportunity, a lot of new space for new plants, which is always fun. And it's muddy and raining right now, and I think, let's see how many days. 9 days ago we just had Samantha Grace, so I can't really get out and do a whole lot yet, so it's fun to talk about these things and just start dreaming about our gardens this season. So I've kind of ordered this list from the ones I'm most excited about, and then we're going to work our way down. There are 14 new ones. Some of them are categories, I guess, because there's several varieties within that specific category of plant. So the first one is called a Toffee Tart Heuchera. This specific color category in Heuchera always makes me excited because I feel like they really lend themselves nicely in every single season. So when they come out in the spring, they're just vibrant and full of color. I mean, they're like this apricot amber color, and then they mellow and deepen to this really beautiful ginger color, and then they slide right into fall, like looking absolutely perfect for the season. And then they are a semi-evergreen, so in more mild climates, I think they're zone 4 through 9. But in more mild climates, they'll stay very nice and full. In colder climates, I'm in a 6, and they're kind of like, they do pretty well for us. I mean, they keep their color, they keep their leaves. In the more protected spots, they do look a little bit better, to where in the spring you may have to go in and clean up maybe some tattered leaves around the base, but for the most part they stay pretty nice. And the other thing I really like about this one, like I think it gets 8 to 10 inches tall, but then it sends up its bloom spikes a little bit taller, and they're creamy colored. And that's my favorite in the Heuchera family. I mean, you can get some really wild colored ones like bright pink and red and all those sorts of things, but I like the creamy ones because I feel like they almost look like baby's breath in a flower arrangement, like they're a really wonderful filler and give that kind of wispy, beautiful, delicate appearance. And so I said I think 8 to 10 inches tall, maybe 16 to 18 inches wide. So they like a part shade location. That's their favorite, where they can get a little bit of light because they will color up better, but they will tolerate a shadier location. They just may not be colored up quite as nicely. And they do tend to like more like average to acidic soil. So in our area, you know, treating them with soil acidifier and things like that, where we're really high pH, really helps them out. But they're just a really nice plant to use in the landscape and in flower boxes. A lot of our boxes around our house under our windows are in the shade, and so I really lean heavily on Heucheras because they look so good through the whole season, and they are absolutely no maintenance. Number 2 is an ornamental oregano called Drops of Jupiter, and this is such a striking plant because they have chartreuse leaves, and then their blooms are kind of a dark mauve. And they get quite large, so like 24 inches tall, 36 inches wide, and they attract bees and butterflies. They're resistant to deer, and I just think that they are a striking plant in the landscape. I'm super excited to try this one. I've seen it in pictures only so far, so I'm hoping that I can get my hands on some this year and try them out. And they are, like, they have edible leaves, but they're not quite as strong as your traditional oregano, which I tend to like a little bit. I like to have a very kind of mellowed out herb flavor when I'm cooking instead of really strong in your face flavor, so I think this is going to be a really fun one, both ornamental and edible. They're also a zone 4 through 9, so incredibly winter hardy, and you can shear them back mid-season if you would like to kind of encourage some new fresh growth, but it's not necessary to do that. They typically start blooming about midsummer, and then they go through fall. Number 3 is called Spot On Pulmonaria. The common name is Lungwort. We actually did a video where I planted 5 of these underneath our crabapple tree in our front garden last year, and they're just a wonderful plant for a shady location because not only do they provide beautiful blooms, which when they are in bud stage, they're a salmon pink, and when they open, they're blue. So you get this variation of pink and blue on the same plant, but the leaf structure is so gorgeous. I love them. They're kind of long and narrow-ish, and they're a medium green with a silver kind of variegation, kind of silver spotting on the top, and they just look good all the time. They're also a plant that can tolerate really high pH soil, which is what we have here, and that is rare. It is rare to find a plant that actually wants to go out in our native soil and really thrive and do well. And they're a zone 3 through 8, so incredibly winter hardy, and they do attract pollinators. So honeybees and hummingbirds, I don't think I was out there enough to notice if hummingbirds were attracted to mine, but the honeybees sure love them. I did notice that when I was walking by because those tend to be out in much more quantity than hummingbirds in our area. But they grow about 14 to 16 inches tall and 18 to 20 inches wide. So the 5 I planted will really turn into a beautiful looking drift. Number 4 is a Russian sage called Sage Advice. Now, I've been planting the denim and lace variety for several years now with amazing luck. They're one of those plants that you can toss into a hot, dry, sunny area with poor soil, and they will just thrive for you and love you for it. They also attract honeybees like nobody's business. And all other kinds of, there's a bunch of other pollinators that I notice around them. I don't know the names of all of the different flying insects, but I notice that there's just a buzz of activity all the time around them. And they do attract hummingbirds as well. Now this variety, the Sage Advice, gets a little bit bigger than denim and lace, but just by inches. I think denim and lace grows 28 to 32 inches tall, and this one grows 32 to 36 inches tall. So we're just talking a few inches bigger, 28 to 32 inches wide. But this is one that I cut it back at the end of the season, and then it flushes back brand new in the spring. It looks fresh and gorgeous, and the fact that they don't get so big means that you deal with a lot less structural issues. You know, some of the traditional varieties of Russian sage get huge, and they'll flop over either because they're just enormous or because they're getting too much water or not enough light. So it's usually one of those 3 things as to why they'll want to flop, but it's just a lot less likely to happen on those more tight growers that stay more compact. And this one's just got the most beautiful kind of rich lavender colored flowers that last. So they start blooming midsummer, and then they're there for most the rest of the season. They're also a zone 4 through 9 and are resistant to deer if that is something that you deal with in your area. Number 5 is a baptisia called Decadence Deluxe Blue Bubbly, and I love baptisia. It's one of those beautiful plants that comes up fresh every year, and it blooms usually like late spring through early summer, so it's really early color that gives you kind of the same vibe as a delphinium or a foxglove or something like that. You know, they get the long panicles of blooms. So this one gets them that are about 16 inches long. Beautiful blue color. And I've got like pink lemonade out there. I've got a chocolate decadence. I'm trying to remember all the names, but they're incredibly long-lived perennial that can handle really crummy soil. They like the sun. They grow quite large, 48 to 54 inches tall, about 40 to 48 inches wide every single year. So it's one that you cut back every year, and then they come back and look beautiful. Now the leaves on baptisia to me almost have kind of this eucalyptus-esque look to them, like they're more rounded. So even when they're done blooming, they've got a really beautiful soft look to them that adds a really fun texture into a flower bed. Because you know, a lot of other just green shrubs, they've got just regular shaped leaves that come out and then kind of point at the end, and this one's just more lobed, like just a rounded, I don't know if lobed's the right word, rounded, which just gives a different look. So I just really am a fan of baptisias. They're also a zone 4 through 9, and they're resistant to deer and attract bees and butterflies. They're just kind of an all-around workhorse great plant to have in the garden for some early color. Number 6 is actually 2 different plants. They're 2 different types of echinacea. One is called color coated, the price is white, and the other is color coated, frankly scarlet. Now the price is white really excites me. I was really looking forward to, like, I heard about this plant last year, and I was looking forward to adding it to my moon garden, which I don't think I'm going to keep a moon garden, but I'm excited to still add this plant into our garden because echinaceas are one of those plants that start blooming right in the middle of summer when our first flush of perennials, you know, all of our salvias and verbenas, monardas, all those things have already kind of fizzled. We've cut them back and we're waiting for a second flush of bloom. But that's when these echinaceas start to really shine and look gorgeous. But not only the color that they provide, you know, midsummer through fall, but if you leave the flowers intact and kind of leave that seed head, they're absolutely gorgeous as winter interests. They provide forage for wildlife, but the color of them, so the color of them in season, they've got like little orange tips kind of on them, really, really interesting. And I love to even cut the flowers. Sometimes I'll even pull the petals off because I just want to use that kind of seed head looking thing as an accent in one of my arrangements. But if you leave them, the color will, you know, mellow out. It'll turn into kind of a brown seed head, but they stay really like upright and really rigid. They don't tend to fall over, and they just add a beautiful texture to your winter garden. So both of these varieties attract bees and butterflies. They're both deer resistant, both like full sun, and both are a zone 4 through 8, and they can handle a lot of different kinds of soil. They do get a little bit different in size. The white one grows 20 to 22 inches tall and 16 to 18 inches wide, while the frankly scarlet, which is a really bold red, for those of you who love that red vibe in your garden, it grows about 26 to 28 inches tall and about 18 to 20 inches wide. Now the frankly scarlet, I'm not sure because I've not seen this one in person, but in some pictures it looks like a really vivid, bright, just clear red. but in the description and in some of the pictures, it says it's got kind of an orange side to the red, which I think it kind of gives it almost like it's got a melon kind of vibe underneath, which you could pair it with maybe some corally colors and it might be really pretty. So it's one I may experiment with. I always like to experiment in a small scale with reds in containers. If I can keep it contained and kind of move it to a spot, a spot where I don't have a lot of like peachy colors or pinks or something like that, then I really do enjoy kind of messing around with colors like that. So we may see some in my garden this year. Number 7 is a Jacob's Ladder called Heaven Sent, and it's just one of those plants that's very nostalgic for me. There's some that I remember like weeding around as a child and just really enjoying the look of. This one has a very fern-like quality about it. The leaves are very soft. They've got some purple accents on them, and then in late spring they put on these really beautiful kind of cornflower blue blooms that are scented. Now in some areas they can take quite a bit of sun. If you live in the south somewhere very, very hot, and maybe even here where we don't have very much cloud cover or humidity, those are great areas to make sure that they have protection in the afternoon from that searing afternoon sun. So give them a good block of morning sun, protect them in the afternoon. If you're a more mild climate, you probably get away with putting them wherever you want in the sun, maybe in a little bit of a part shade area, just to make them look the best throughout the whole season. And in really hot areas, they do prefer to be in an area that's a little cooler, maybe a little bit more moist. So it might be somewhere where that you can control the water a little bit more and give them extra in those really hot spells of summer. We've got a spot along kind of by our kitchen door entrance. For those of you who have been watching our videos for a while, we've got that gray concrete table, and then there's the 3 trellises right behind it. Right at the base of those trellises, it stays fairly moist and it's very shaded, and I have put some of those in that area. So I'm very much so looking forward to what it looks like, because I do have some hostas in there, and I think the juxtaposition between the bold hosta leaf and the really ferny Jacob's Ladder, well, blooms or not, I think it's going to be a really pretty leafy, textural, beautiful area. And I'm not sure I mentioned already, 18 to 24 inches tall, 15 to 18 inches wide, and zone 3 through 7. Number 8 is a Virginia called Miss Piggy, and I'm loving all the shade options this year, because oftentimes, full sun plants are easy to find. It's easy to find things that like full sun, but shade and to get a lot of variation in a shady spot can be a little bit more difficult. And I love the leaf structure of this plant. I mean, the blooms are beautiful, late spring, bright pink clusters of blooms that kind of rise up above the leaf canopy, but the leaves are really thick and glossy, and they really provide an amazing accent in a shady spot. I mean, think about pairing them with the Jacob's Ladder that has that ferny, more soft green, and the Virginia is that really deep, and then like throw in a Toffee Tart Heuchera and maybe a hosta with some white variegation, and you've got like a really beautiful mix of color and texture right there. This is another one like the Jacob's Ladder that if you live in a very hot region, you would want to make sure to provide a little bit of afternoon reprieve from that bright sun. But when they are blooming, they do attract bees and butterflies. They're resistant to deer and rabbits. They do grow about 16 inches tall, 30 to 32 inches wide, and that's pretty big for one plant. So, I mean, you don't need a whole lot of them to create a huge impact. And did I already mention they were zone 4 through 9? If I didn't, there you go. Number 9 are a couple of new types of salvia. One is called Back to the Fuchsia, and the other one is Snow Kiss. Now there are a couple of salvias that look similar to these. There's Pink Profusion and White Profusion, which I have both of them planted in my garden already, and both of those are smaller versions of what the new ones are. These share a lot of similar characteristics in that they're a zone 3 through 8. They're resistant to rabbits and deer. They will attract every single pollinator that is in your area, and those pollinators will be thick on those plants from the moment the flowers open for the rest of the season. It's just amazing what they do. And even when they're done with their first flush of blooms, you kind of shear them back, they come back, bloom again. Sometimes I can get 3 bloom cycles out of these plants. We have a fairly long season here, and they're just workhorse plants. Like, they just kind of keep producing color, and they're gorgeous planted in drifts. Like, I cannot stress that enough. I've got Pink Profusion and the White Profusion, and I'm excited to try these because, like, the Snow Kiss looks similar in color because a white is kind of a white, but the Back to the Fuchsia is a little bit more, I want to say, it's a little bit more on the purple side of pink, while the Pink Profusion is very pink, but I've got the Pink Profusion in a drift of 5 or 7, and it is such a beautiful show. I've got them planted right next to the Lemon Jade Sedum, and those two together, it's amazing. Number 10, we've got 2 different variety of phlox that are the tall type that grow like 30 to 32 inches tall. I've planted both of these in my garden last July. So there's one variety called Opalescence, which is a light pink that's got a dark pink eye. And then there's ultraviolet, which is like very vibrant magenta. I was so thrilled with these plants, you guys. I mean, I planted them right in the middle of summer, and it's just typically when they start blooming, like mid to late summer. And they were behind a boxwood hedge, which is just starting to fill in, and there's some other plants in there, but they provided so much needed color that I just, like, after we did that video, I just kind of sat back and I just stared at those plants, just loved them. Now, they are way more disease resistant than your traditional varieties of phlox that tend to want to succumb to powdery mildew. You still want to be mindful of air circulation, and that kind of goes for a lot of different types of plants. Plants like to have airflow around, and when they're in too tightly, a lot of times it can cause problems. But these are far less likely to succumb to that, which is very nice. Both zone 3 through 8, and they both attracted a ton of pollinators. And that's something like I'm not actively trying to like making sure every single variety of plant that I put in my garden attracts a pollinator, but it's something that I've been thinking about more and more, and it's something that I would like to strive for, you know, creating a haven not only for myself and my family, but also creating a haven for wildlife, and doing those things that encourages them to come and stay in our garden. There's something magical about that. Number 11 are also phlox, but they're the ground cover type. And these are the type of plants that every time they're in bloom in the spring, which is like mid-spring when they start to bloom, people would flock to the garden center. Like every day I would get multiple questions about what is that plant? That ground cover plant that's just full of color right now. It was always the ground cover phlox. So the first three here, there's rose quartz, pink sparkles, and ruby riot. They share some similar characteristics. So first off, the rose quartz, which I did plant some in my garden last year, they're kind of a rosy pink color. Then we've got the pink sparkles. I don't have that one yet, but that's a soft baby pink flower. And then there's ruby riot, which I also planted in my garden, and it has reddish pink flowers. So they're a zone 3 through 8, and they grow about 4 to 8 inches tall, and then they'll spread out like 28 to 32 inches, I think. Like 30 some inches. Like that's significant for one plant. So to have those in and around like taller perennials in your flower borders is amazing, because they don't really like take up much room vertically, but they can kind of grow in and around your other things and provide so much color. They also do attract bees and butterflies, and kind of prefer a slightly high pH soil, which is great for us here in Eastern Oregon. The other two in this category kind of form a tighter, more dense kind of mat. So 4 to 6 inches tall, a little tiny bit like within inches less wide. I think maybe 28 to 30 inches wide, something like that. But one is called Crater Lake, which is gorgeous, like bluish purple blooms. That's the one that I would be the most excited to plant, I think, because I love the color on that one so much. And you can see just by looking at this plant, the bloom to leaf ratio when they're in bloom, like all you can see is color. And there's also majestic magenta, which is a bright pink. These also attract the pollinators. They are slightly less winter hardy, so a zone 4 through 8 rather than a 3 through 8 like the other three that we just talked about. And they do prefer a slightly higher, like average to higher pH soil. Number 12 are a couple of new types of hibiscus, like the big dinner plate hibiscus. So one is called French vanilla, and the other is spinderella. So French vanilla produce these huge flowers. They're like 7 to 8 inches wide, and I have some of these in the greenhouse. I saw them bloom last year. I had them. I didn't have a chance to plant them yet, so I'm itching to get them in the garden. But like 7 to 8 inch flowers that are this kind of creamy custard yellow color. They will be more of a yellow tone in more mild, cooler climates, and where it's hotter, they'll be more on the white side. And then right at the middle, the center of the flower, there's like a little red right around, yeah, like a red throat almost. So it just like provides this huge amount of color. They grow about 42 to 48 inches wide, and this is the type that grows up from the ground fresh every spring, and they're one of the last ones to break dormancy. So it's one of those that you think is dead, but you want to give it like another month. And then usually they spring forward, and then when they start growing, they grow fast. And these have kind of a deep green leaf, so that contrast between the light colored bloom and the deep green is really beautiful. They're also a zone 4 through 9, as is the next variety, which is the spinderella. And I think I actually like this one. I like this one a lot. I think it has a really unique look to it, like pink and white, almost kind of swirlish. I don't know. I have this one as well, and I shared some pictures of it last year when it was in bloom. It also has kind of that deep pink kind of red eye, but the color around it is just really unique in the way it's kind of like marbled. I don't even know how to explain it. The flowers are about 8 inches across, and these plants can handle really high moisture conditions. So if you have a boggy, really moist area in your garden, this is a great option. And full sun, like it needs to be a full sun spot. That's where they perform the best. It grows a little bit bigger, 48 to 54 inches wide and 54 to 60 inches tall. And they're both resistant to deer. I don't think I mentioned that before. Number 13 is a couple new varieties of daylily. One is called King of the Ages and the other is Lake of Fire. So we'll start with King of the Ages, which actually, it's kind of funny. I look at the pictures of this plant, and I have some of these on hand as well. Bloomed gorgeous last year. They're a tall one, like 38 inches tall, 18 to 24 inches wide. So like super striking in the garden. And the flowers are big, 6.5 inches, but the color is like this blend of apricot kind of yellow, and then there's a dark burgundy eye, and then like dark burgundy around the ruffly edges. But that's my high school colors. My high school colors were cardinal and corn. And this flower, like this is the flower for my high school. So I should probably have them somewhere in my garden. They are a zone 3 through 9 and prefer a really sunny location, as most daylilies will want. And they do attract all the pollinators, and they're resistant to rabbits. But a super tough perennial that provides crazy vertical interest. I think it's a really fun one to try. So the next variety, Lake of Fire, doesn't grow quite as big, so 24 inches tall rather than the 38, but the flower, like in passing, if I were just to look at it quickly, I would think iris. I don't know if you guys get that from it, but I do, just because the petals rather are so ruffled. They're so ruffled and kind of downturned, and there's so much color variation. So the eye is this really vivid kind of red orange, and then it goes out to like an orange peach. Then you've got like a darker burgundy striping, and then you've got like really thin yellow margin all the way around the ruffles. Like there's so much going on in this flower, and they're big, like 7 inches big. And these attract all the pollinators as well, resistant to rabbits, zone 3 through 9. And I do really like daylilies. I have got some in our garden, and I do get the question sometimes, like, I don't see any daylilies, why don't you have them? And I do really like the leaf structure. I like the fact that they look like a grass, kind of, but they also give you blooms at the same time. And I just haven't put a whole lot of them in our garden yet, but just wait for it. We'll have more. And the last ones on my list, number 14, are a couple different types of dianthus. There's Paint the Town Red and Paint the Town Fancy. Now, dianthus aren't super high up on my list of like my favorite perennials. I can't deny that they provide a ton of color when they're in bloom, and I don't know if I just haven't figured out the best ways to care for them or how to shear them back properly, but I'm always like, maybe like I missed the window, but I always feel like there's a ton of buds still there when I want to go in and cut mine back. And so I'm afraid that I'm going to cut off a ton of buds while trying to deadhead my plant. And I don't want to spend a ton of time like individually deadheading, if that makes sense. I don't know if any of you have found that. So I just need to figure out how to do it better. Anyway, these are vibrant though. The Paint the Town Red, single flowers, red. Paint the Town Fancy, bright pink single flowers. But on the Paint the Town Fancy, they do have the pink flowers have a little bit of a red eye, so there's some variation there in color, and the leaves on both of these are really pretty blue, and I do really like that. Like, so I really need to figure out, I'd love to have that blue color in my garden with the kind of spikier leaf structure, so I really need to get after, like, maybe I'll just try a handful of them and see how I do. And they do like slightly high pH soil, so I think if I were to get them in the ground and get them going, they really would perform well for me in terms of like, you know, their staying power and really thriving in our soil. But they're both a zone 4 through 9, grow about 6 to 8 inches tall and 16 to 18 inches wide. They do attract bees and butterflies and are resistant to deer. So that's it, you guys. That is my list of new perennials for this year. So 14 different categories, a lot of different varieties though, because I think one of the categories had 5 in it, right? The ground cover phlox. So I think we talked about quite a number of new plants, a lot of stuff to be excited for. I mean, I've got some spots that are earmarked for some of these plants already. And then, you know, I've got a few of them going already in the garden. It'll be fun to see how they do their second year. It's fun to give you guys updates like when we do garden tours and show you how some of the plants are doing. Of course, this year is going to be wild with updates, I think, because some of the stuff that we had planted will have to be torn out. Some of it will stay and we'll move to other parts of our property. Some of it are going to friends and family's homes. It's just going to be, it's going to be fun. So we have a lot in store this year. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it inspiring or exciting I always find it exciting talking about plants. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.